Chris, and I'm a recovering Elon Musk groupie.
Hi, Chris.
Guess it kind of started for me when he tweeted about not taking Bitcoin anymore. Got obliterated.
Meanwhile, he's getting a $4.9 billion subsidy from the government.
Hey, a lot of companies make all their profits from tax credits. That's normal.
I don't get it. He just woke up one day and decided that he didn't like the energy he used. Like, I didn't even know he used energy.
He knew, Christopher. He just didn't care.
He might have cared a little.
I know, when he's messing around and making us money, that's fun. But then when he starts losing us money, I'm like, that's not fun.
Actually, Elon tweeted about Bitcoin last week, though, so I don't know if I need to be here.
Hey, sit down. Check the price. It doesn't even move the markets anymore.
Maybe not in this version of the simulation.
Kind of like a long-term hodler now anyways, not by choice.
He turned us all into long-term hodlers. This is what he does. He plays with our emotions. Like when he promised you a fleet of self-driving taxis by 2020. What happened?
How do I know he doesn't want to make me rich? You piece of... But loving billionaires is so trendy right now. What else are millennials supposed to do? Work at Amazon? Welcome back, beautiful and amazing human beings. This is OTCQB of WeAreChange.org. A lot of absolutely crazy, ridiculous news to get into today. Absolute fireworks between Dr. Fauci and Rand Paul. But predominantly, we are going to be focusing on the economy, how the government intervened, made it a lot worse, and how they plan to intervene again. To talk about that, plus a lot more, we have an interview with Max Porterfield. He is the CEO, director, and president of Callinex. We're going to be talking to them, plus a lot more. But before we do, the clip that we played in the beginning of this broadcast was, of course, from Ryan Long with his latest bit about the Elon Musk fan support group. If you want to watch the full video, the link is down below. It is definitely worth the watch. And this is a great video highlighting the obsession some people have with billionaires. In related billionaire news, Jeff Bezos launched his Blue Origin Wiener rocket into space and successfully made it down to Earth, with many people predominantly commenting how the rocket looked like a wiener and how some Amazon employees got to finally take a break since Jeff Bezos was in space. Also, a lot of similarities here to Dr. Evil in Austin Powers, but I'll let you figure that one on your own. Jeff Bezos also personally thanked all the customers of Amazon that made this mission, quote, possible. And as a reminder here, many people didn't even have a choice but to use Amazon because of the draconian lockdowns that were instituted by centralized governments that closed small mom and shop businesses but allowed businesses to be open. There was some protest regarding this in the United Kingdom, specifically on Freedom Day, which unironically UK police beat, assaulted, and arrested a number of participants. Also in the United Kingdom, a lot of business owners are coming forward and announcing publicly that they will not be enforcing a government-mandated medical passport. This, as a lot of people had enough with the policies that were spearheaded by no one other than Dr. Fauci, who of course was one of the biggest proponents of lockdowns, which there is some preliminary scientific data highlighting how it had absolutely almost no effect on what happened specifically here in the United States, especially when you compared the data sets from California, New York, and comparatively to its counterparts in Texas and Florida. Today, Dr. Fauci got asked pointed questions by U.S. Senator Rand Paul, and Dr. Fauci, in an emotional tirade, decided to launch accusations against Rand Paul that he was, quote, lying, and that Rand Paul was arguing a specific point which he never made. The emotional tirade lasted for 6 minutes and is definitely worth a watch. In related Democrats in an emotional tirade news, we have the latest news that more Texas Democrats are testing positive for the global sickness, as of course all of them recently booked a private jet, flew together in order to make sure that the Texas legislative body was not able to continue. It's also important to note that all of these Democrats that fled Texas from its government, from it being able to proceed, have all, of course, taken the shot. They went to White House, where they got a standing ovation from the Vice President of the United States. They also held meeting with Nancy Pelosi and other White House officials, and now we're hearing word that people in the White House, along with Nancy Pelosi's aides, are also testing positive. A lot of the people who are testing positive have taken the shot, which is raising some serious concerns for a lot of individuals. Now, of course, I'm already saying too much. I'm going to say a lot more, specifically on LukeUncensored.com, not just about this topic, but specifically what just happened in India, which is absolutely fascinating, on top of the incentivized sterilizations that also have just been announced in that country. A lot to cover. A lot of it is too spicy here. Luke Uncensored is where we're going to be specifically talking about it. But jumping into our main segment, financially, economically, things are absolutely freaking ridiculous, as many people are seeing common household items rise dramatically right in front of their eyes. Stocks, bonds, crude crashed yesterday. Bitcoin dropped below 30,000. This as there's a new viral video of Malaysian police officers literally steamrolling a large amount of Bitcoin mining machines. And financially, things look like they will get a lot worse since the direct government intervention that has incentivized unemployment, that has created inflation with absolutely ridiculous money printing, with more debt than the United States has ever had within its history, and the debt drastically increasing. The Biden administration announced that it's going to boost spending in order to help the economy. I'm not kidding you. Again, lots to delve into. That's why we're going to talk to Max Porterfield about this, plus a lot more. He is the CEO and founder of Callinex, and it's important for you guys to know that this video was conducted on behalf of Callinex. We are working together, and for me, this is a win-win for everyone. This is a win for his company. This is a win for the audience that gets a perspective about ear-on-the-ground information about the business world that they never would have gotten, especially from a perspective that they wouldn't normally hear on the U.S. mainstream media. Now, just jumping right into it. So, Max, before even introducing yourself, what do you make of all this crazy bipolar news happening in the markets today? As, of course, we got the news that stocks, bonds, crude all went down. And if you look at what the mainstream media is talking about, we have an article here by Yahoo Finance that is saying the American economy is booming and so is business optimism. And then, of course, we have Bloomberg that reported today that Wall Street's new fear is that economic growth has peaked. Max, with your expertise on the ground, with you in the business world, what do you make of this latest news? How do you make sense of it all?
I mean, quite frankly, I think the media is really good at doing what the media is really good at supposedly doing, is creating a storyline. And the reality is that I think most people would probably disagree with that article and not really believe that the economy is just doing as great as everyone leads us out to believe that it's doing. It's very similar to the 1970s, where you had big government spending, and everyone on the onset thought everything was booming, everything was great, but truly everything was just being propped up by the actions of policymakers. And today's no different. If anything, today's much worse. Yeah, in my opinion.
Yeah, there's a lot of crazy similarities, especially with the 1970s and now. But before getting into all of that, before getting into your company, Silver, what's happening with the Biden administration, what's happening in China, first of all, Max, we talked last year, but if people don't remember who you are, how would you introduce yourself, and can you tell us about your company, Callinex?
Sure. Again, I'm Max Porterfield. I'm President and CEO of Callinex Mines. We're based in Precious Metals Explorer in Canada, with the objective of creating long-term jobs through the discovery of what will become economic base and precious metals deposits in close proximity to infrastructure. And I think that we're well on our way to that goal, achieving that goal, and really doing our part for environmentally sustainable growth as the economy does get back on its footing eventually, and the world gets moving again.
Yeah, now just kind of jumping into the main topic here, I really wanted to talk about the Biden administration because obviously with this new president, we have a Democratic House, we have a Democratic Senate, they are in the majority. I kind of wanted to get your perspective on how you see this administration unfolding with their policies, as Biden just came out with a statement insisting that inflation is, quote, expected and only, quote, temporarily. Do you think he's telling the truth there? And how do you see his presidency shaping out from here?
Well, I think, like most anything with Biden, I think he's saying what he's being told to say and reading quite nicely off of what he's being told to read. Because, the whole notion that it's going to be transitory this is a shorter term phenomenon. I think the more we get into this and the more people see that that's not the case, the weaker and weaker that story becomes. And they're going to have to pivot to a new story. So as of right now, it's transitory, it's short-lived, but at some point they're going to have to address this. And really up until now, it's been ignore and talk away from the reality of the situation that we're seeing unfold in front of us.
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty crazy. I mean, we keep seeing more conversations about stimulus checks, more taxations, more regulations, more giant infrastructure programs, more trillion-dollar government packages, and it's just, how long can this keep going? What can we expect, especially with this ballooning deficit moving forward, especially in the next 2 to 4 years?
Well, I think it's pretty much guaranteed that there's going to be more deficit spending, because if the policymakers are taking the situation seriously, they're not going to change their behavior pattern. And quite frankly, they've been kind of trained into this position to where they give money away, giving money away gets some votes, and then they get reelected and they retain their jobs. But just like your home, a family can't endlessly run up credit card debt and then just think to themselves, everything's going to be okay, everything's going to be fine. We don't need to pay that off, or we'll pay it off at some point in the future. This is just not reality. And I think it's going to be some, interesting times when reality starts to set in. But longer term, I don't think this is anything that we're not going to come out of on top. I think the American people are resilient people. The resiliency has shown that time and time again, no matter what it's been faced with. And I don't think that's going to change.
We see a lot of hopeful rhetoric by the establishment, but as you said, the picture here, the credit card debt keeps adding up here. We even have conversations created by the Biden administration about wanting to electrify the government's fleet. And in relation to China, there's a lot of things to understand here, especially when it comes to resources. But what do you make of this larger kind of effort to use more, quote, electricity and clean energy and less fossil fuels? And how do you think that's going to play out in the future as well?
Well, I mean, it's going to be a big win for base metals in general as you move away from the hydrocarbon. This whole notion, I think longer term it's going to fade, but I think oil is a necessity for everyday lives. I mean, the fact is if you touch it or use it, it's either been pumped, mined, or grown. And while there's a shorter term outlook where again, government policy is a precursor for change, so they're putting in place some policies to shift away from the dependence for transportation on oil and gas, but you've got to replace that with something, and you've got to replace that with metals. And so it's really going to be a time where metals are going to shine, miners are going to shine, and to meet that need, it's going to be very, very challenging because, again, you've had a lack of investment, particularly in the base metal space, for over a decade. And exploration is a very, very challenging business. From a discovery hole to production on average for copper is 7 years. So when you've had a lack of investment in terms of exploration and development for a very sustainable period of time, and then you've got a dramatic shift in demand that's artificially being put in place in there by policymakers, that can only lead to one thing, and that's much, much higher prices, which you've already started to see, but it's going to be further exacerbated by the inflationary environment that we're in today.
Yeah, I don't think politicians know how hard it is to find zinc, copper, silver, and other kind of precious metals out there. And kind of shifting here, I wanted your perspective on China in this larger conversation, because they're announcing that they're allegedly recovering, doing better than ever, and they're, of course, in a full-blown race with their Belt and Road Initiative, trying to get as many resources as they can. How do you see them in this larger kind of discussion? Because you kind of see two different policies, especially when it comes to the West and the East here.
Well, I mean, I think that's just going back to how those governments are set up. In terms of job creation, China's done a great job of creating job creation through infrastructure spending. That was really what they kind of pinned their growth of their economy off of, is, the infrastructure in China, being the roads, the trains, the airports. If you've ever flown into China, you know exactly what I'm talking about in terms of the size and scale of that infrastructure. And that's not dissimilar to what the United States did, coming out of World War II, and then eventually, what led to the Roaring '50s was infrastructure spending and the interconnecting of the United States to the interstate system, the building of the national parks was a big driver of job creation. So China's been using this decade over a decade very, very successfully because, the Kuznets cycle is a theory that states, again, when you spend money on infrastructure, it's going to create jobs for 20 years. And so the Chinese are really just expanding upon what they've already been doing for decades with the One Belt, One Road initiative, which is an infrastructure program the world's never seen over before. Now, in the United States, there's been a lot of rhetoric on either side of the aisle in terms of political parties about infrastructure spending being necessary, even going back to the Trump administration. That was something that was, kind of a key part of the agenda and the policy was on infrastructure, which is obviously going to be a big driver for commodities and base metals. But you really haven't seen it follow through. You got the infrastructure plan coming through Biden. But what I don't like to see about it, while I do like to see infrastructure spending, I think it's very, very critical. I think it'd be a great way to create jobs. I'm not a big fan of the human infrastructure component of the bill. When you look at that portion of it, it really goes back to childcare, paying for people's colleges and those sorts of things. While I don't say that's unimportant, I just don't think that that's what needs to be shoved into an infrastructure bill. Truly, I think it needs to be going to the building blocks and the networks that really sustain the economy that are crumbling apart in the United States, whether you're in any of these airports, you're driving on the roads, the bridges, everyone can see it. And I think that's something that everyone will get behind. So certainly China's led the way on that, and they weren't the first to do that. And I don't think the last to do that in terms of focusing on infrastructure to drive job creation.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy how the infrastructure bill has not that much dedicated towards actual real infrastructure. It's sort of like the Patriot Act, absolutely not being patriotic at all. But what do you expect from a duplicitous government releasing a lot of this information? But anyway, I could keep ranting about this for a very long time. But just going back to our original topic, especially with precious metals, some people are saying that there's a silver squeeze going on right now. What's your kind of assessment on that?
I'll be honest with you, I'm not a big proponent on the silver squeeze storyline. I mean, again, I think a lot of people that don't understand what's going on oftentimes look to a story that makes the most compelling storyline to fit the kind of the outcome. But at the end of the day, do I believe that silver prices are going to move higher? Yes. But again, I think that's really going to be driven by supply and demand fundamentals, necessarily, purported squeeze on silver and that you're going to squeeze out the shorts. And all that. I'm not one to really buy into that storyline myself, but I definitely like the silver space, certainly.
I mean, yeah, you're in the space. Your company's called Callinex Mines. You do a lot of work in the space, and if you don't mind getting into it, what's your strategy kind of moving forward in this crazy economic cycle that we're in right now? How are you moving forward with your company?
Well, we're really very, very focused organization and very systematic in terms of how we conduct exploration. But the real focus has always been and remains unchanged is, again, exploring in close proximity to these Canadian mining jurisdictions. 4 new discoveries. We've got a number of discoveries across the portfolio. That's really highlighted by our rainbow discovery outside of Flin Flon, Manitoba. And when we conduct exploration, we're really, again, as I mentioned before, we're focused on proximity to infrastructure because as an exploration company, if I'm going to go out and take our team to explore and make a discovery, oftentimes a lot of people go to very, very remote places, and that's very, very expensive to do. I mean, the exploration business in general is high risk and very expensive, and we'd look to mitigate those risks. So again, when we're exploring near infrastructure, that's going to reduce your upfront exploration costs. It's going to reduce your upfront capital costs to take a deposit into production when it goes to a mining type of scenario. And it also leverages and creates jobs where they need to be immediately created. In the Rainbow Discoveries case, we're hitting exceptionally high-grade copper, very, very high-grade copper. In terms of on average, we're probably north of 4% copper in the intercepts that we've had into the Rainbow. On a global basis, the global average copper grade that's mined is 0.5% copper and that average is brought down by these big open pit deposits. So to be able to be intersecting high-grade copper in close proximity to infrastructure where the mine, the 777 mine that's operating in Flin Flon, which is a town there, is shutting down next year, is going to come at a very critical time for that community. So again, we're focused on making discoveries in proximity to infrastructure where we can have immediate impact both to meet the global economy's demand for the metals, but on a kind of a micro factor in the communities is, sustaining the long-term jobs that have been there into the future through discovery.
Now, being a little silly here, hearing the words rainbow discovery definitely sounds something like the Canadian government would absolutely love and cheer on right now. But as we know, there's a lot of regulations, there's a lot of restrictions working in Canada. Have you had any success there? And then what is a rainbow discovery for people who are not in the business and don't know what it means?
I'm a dual citizen. I'm originally an American, so I was a big part of obviously naming the name Rainbow. But there's a lot of sentiment that goes behind the name. But in terms of operating in Canada, Canada is actually a tier 1 jurisdiction in terms of as mines go, and there's a rule of law. So if you look at Flin Flon, for example, Flin Flon's been operating for almost 100 years of continuous production, and now is a very critical time with that mine shutting down. And again, I think by and large, when there's a big need, people come together and act together in unison, particularly when it's for the greater good. And that's certainly been the case for everything that we've done in terms of our exploration endeavors and efforts outside of Flin Flon and Manitoba. Big support from the government. There's a rule of law. Again, where we're operating, there's a long history. We're talking about 32 mines and counting. So this isn't going into a new area that has never seen a mine operate before. And that's really great to be working in these jurisdictions. A lot of times, if you look at Peru, Chile, where you have the government come in and look to nationalize, it's not a good place to be operating. Or, for example, when you're in the Congo, if you look at in terms of the highest grade copper around the world, and if you look at the top 10 highest grade copper mines, probably 7 out of 10 of those mines are going to be in Central Africa. And so you have the geopolitical risk by operating in those type of areas. So as far as I can see it, we're in the best of both worlds. We're hitting the exceptionally high grade copper, and we're also doing it in a very, very safe jurisdiction at a time where there's a very, very critical need for that metal. In terms of what the Rainbow Discovery is a discovery we made in August of last year. We've been drilling outside of Flin Flon, about a 20-minute drive from this town, where that infrastructure is due to wind down next year because the existing mine's going to end. And we're hitting exceptionally high-grade copper. It's, high-grade copper carries gold, silver, and zinc as a byproduct. And as this world shifts away from the hydrocarbon, at least for the shorter term, it really stands to benefit because there's low-cost, clean power. There's a hydroelectric power line that's literally within 200 meters of the deposit where it's been discovered. So it really checks a lot of the boxes. And now what we're really just focused on is delineating what's the size and scale of this discovery. And that's what we're doing, right now through the ongoing drilling campaign.
So, what is the best case scenario for you guys? What do you guys hope to accomplish? How are you guys kind of moving forward from here? And how does everything play out in the future that's going to best benefit you guys?
Yeah, so obviously, best case scenario is we keep doing what we're doing, and we keep hitting exceptionally high grade copper. As we grow Rainbow, we need Rainbow to grow to a critical size. Obviously, we're eyeing down a standalone operation, but there's also potential for the deposit to be leveraged off existing infrastructure, like I mentioned, that's in the town there. So ultimately, in the exploration and mining business, there's really 3 stages. You have exploration, which is what our skill set is. We actually go out there. It's obviously on the higher end of the risk profile, but when we make a discovery, that's when you can create a tremendous amount of wealth for your shareholder base, and that's what we're set out to do. And then you go into development, and then eventually production. So obviously we're focused on exploration, and at some point when we get to critical size, we'll bring in a partner, whether it be a joint partner, or the partner will come out and straight up acquire the asset or the company. That would really define success at Callinex.
Max, thank you so much for giving us the ear on the ground information. Thanks for your perspective. Thanks for all the information you provided. Anything else you want to say about what you're doing, your company, and specifically where can people find you?
Well, first things first, we're super excited about everything we're up to. We're very, very passionate explorers, and we like to build a shareholder base that are just excited about what we do as we are. And then to learn more about it, you can visit our website at callinex.ca. There's all the information on our properties and projects and the news flow to that, and then contact information as well. And if you'd like to buy the stock, you can do so in the United States. We trade over the counter with the ticker CLLXF. Again, CLLXF. And then if you have the opportunity to buy on the Canadian markets, we trade on the Toronto Venture Exchange under the ticker CNX.
Max, thanks so much for coming on. Really appreciate your kind of perspective, your information that you provided. And if you found this information valuable or helpful, share it with your friends and family members. It is more imperative than ever. Without you, I wouldn't be here, and this is why I love you guys. Stay tuned for more here on wearechange.org.